Well, Mariam Zaidi joins me now from Brussels. Hello to you, Mariam. Donald Tusk has been reacting in the last few minutes. What's he had to say?
Hi, Jeff. Well, so Donald Tusk, the EU Council President, has, of course, tweeted that in light of the UK House of Commons rejecting the withdrawal agreement for now a third time, a new European Council is up and coming on April 10th. So that's going to be potentially 2 days before a hard Brexit. That could happen, of course, still on April the 12th. So this new summit will, of course, run on potentially a similar, you could say, mandate, if you like, to just last week's summit, you know, to basically prep for no deal, but also to find a common consensus amongst the EU 27 countries and what kind of extension they are, of course, willing to offer the UK when it comes to Article 50, Jeff.
Now, you and I, Mariam, have been debating Brexit for years, 2 years at least.
And we're having a lot of fun.
And a lot of fun, yes, we have had a lot of fun. It's not quite so much fun today as we get nearer and nearer. But one story that I wanted to bring up with you, I've heard that one EU minister has named her cat Brexit, because the cat apparently stands by the door all day long, waiting to go out, and then as soon as the door is opened, the cat just stands there and doesn't leave. Is it fair to say then, you're out there in Brussels, is it fair to say that Europeans are sick to death of this toing and froing from Westminster? We don't know whether we want to stay, we don't know whether we want to go.
Jeff, well, you know, sadly, that cat, that story of little fluffy Brexit was actually a lie. The French minister did say that she made the whole thing up, it was a joke, but sadly Brexit itself isn't a figment of at least our imaginations. It's not fluffy, and in fact, you know, as we can see just today, with the withdrawal agreement being rejected now a third time by the UK House of Commons, it's turning into, you know, one big nightmare, and it's definitely a nightmare for the EU. I mean, you can just see their frustration through every tweet, and the fact that they now have to come across and do another EU summit just after 1 week. And I think really this exchange that was in Strasbourg, so just a few days ago in Strasbourg, the European Parliament was meeting for their parliamentary plenary session. This exchange was between the EU Brexit negotiator Michel Barnier and, of course, the man who calls himself the father or the godfather of Brexit, MEP Nigel Farage. And so basically Farage, in his typical style, was asking the EU not to give the UK a Brexit extension, and Barnier basically replied that no one in Brussels is stealing Brexit from the UK, and he reminded Farage that, of course, it was the UK who wanted to leave the EU and that they must take responsibility and face up to the consequences, and that's for no one else. So, you know, if nothing else, really, the EU is just sick of being blamed, and, you know, they're always reminding the UK that, of course, there is a deal on the table at every turn. And, you know, here's another example of the mess of Brexit. Today, a ceremony took place in Spain to relocate the operational headquarters of the EU's multinational naval force for Operation Atalanta from Norwood in the UK to a place in Spain. And the headquarters, of course, had to be relocated because of Brexit. You know, no EU headquarters can be stationed in a non-EU country. So that was done today ahead, of course, of the clock striking midnight. You know, don't forget too that the UK, of course, lost the EU Medicines Agency to Amsterdam. But, you know, as I pointed out in that report you saw, and, you know, I have also done a quick change of clothes. So the report on the trucks that, you know, people on both sides, whether they're in the UK or anywhere in Europe, it's just a lose-lose situation, Jeff.
It is indeed. I also need to call my cat Brexit. Well, in fact, I need to buy a cat, first of all. Another funny story that I'm just hearing, actually this is not funny, but it's striking me as funny at the moment. The UK Prime Minister, her spokesman, has just said in the last few minutes that the government will continue to talk to lawmakers from all parties, continue discussions with the DUP, and has said in the last few minutes things are moving in the right direction. I'm not quite sure in what universe Theresa May thinks things are moving in the right direction, but there we go. We're also hearing in the last few seconds that Donald Tusk is calling for a crisis summit on April the 10th. But of course, one of the crises here, which we haven't mentioned so far, is the fact that very, very soon the UK will need to start fielding candidates for the European elections. Theresa May has said in many speeches that this is totally unacceptable to ask the British public to vote in these elections. Why do you think it's so unacceptable for Britain to be asked to be involved with the European elections?
Well, Jeff, first of all, I think, the 29th of March is feeling more like April the 1st, because it does feel like one big April Fool's today. But, what will the EU parliamentary elections do? Well, it's going to be a very real reminder of the lack of ability of the UK Conservative Party to negotiate the UK out of the European Union. And, if they then call a snap election, where, who knows when they're going to do that, but you would then wonder how UK Conservative MEPs would actually do in those EU parliamentary elections. Now, the vote today in the Commons, you can ask the question, was it a desperate attempt to stop a long Brexit delay and grind Brexit to a halt? And, if the delay is then long, the UK then, of course, has to field candidates for the EU parliamentary elections. So imagine just how people could vote in the UK after the UK government then delayed Brexit by, well, they didn't actually make the Brexit deadline. Perhaps, who knows, will the Conservative MEPs all get chucked out? And that can happen. It happened to the Liberal Democrats in the last round of EU parliamentary elections. Those people who weren't happy at Nick Clegg voted out all of his MEPs bar one. And, perhaps Theresa May would also rather the public continue not to have an opinion on Brexit. But what we can say today is happy not Brexit Day, Jeff.
It is indeed. But I'm sure you and I are going to be talking about Brexit ad infinitum till we're old people in our bath chairs still discussing Brexit. For now, though, Mariam Zaidi, thank you very much.